Hello and welcome to a review video for two new pieces of content that have landed on the KD simulator. My name's Finn and today we're going to be looking at Skrelle and Morgan the Saviour. Skrelle hit the stores very recently. I wanted to get a video uploaded as quickly as possible to try and be timely with reviewing this. Morgan, on the other hand, at the moment is only digitally available to people with the master key. I have a master key. It was gifted to me by Adam, so take into account any possible biases in regards to Morgan, but Skrelle I paid for direct, so you know, paid with my own monies, and I'm not being paid to review either of these. I'm just doing it because that's what I do. If you want written reviews of these, I've done them both in the past for the physical copies. They are on my Patreon. You can get there by going to the description, click the link to the Patreon, go to the reviews collection tab, and they should be available to everyone. I tried to do the reviews 7 days early for my patrons and then have them go public so they're out there for anyone to read, to try and just, you know, let people have as informed a decision as possible about things. So, as for this, we're mostly going to be talking about the digital content versions, which they are considerably cheaper, $5 plus tax as opposed to $30 plus tax plus shipping plus import costs. So it's always a lot lower barrier to get them on the simulator if that is how you're playing, which is nice. But as I said, at the moment Morgan isn't available for everyone. I assume she is going to become available for everyone because, you know, the physical copy, anyone can pick it up. It's not limited in that way. So I think it's just given out to master key holders a bit early, hopefully. Speaking of which, to touch back to Morg has had a physical printing now, which is great. So my concerns about that are solved. Will continue to be very much against digital exclusive game content, but the digital exclusive stuff they're doing with animations and other kind of bits and pieces that just can't be done physically in the board game, I'm all for that. That's like fantastic, and I really want to see that continuing to grow and develop. I just don't want to see gear cards that are for the simulator only. That kind of just feels bad. Let people play with the stuff. Okay, so in respect to this review, we're going to look at Skrelle first because that's the one that anyone can buy from the store, and then we'll look at Morgan in the second half. So, for now, let's get Skrelle unboxed and take a look, shall we? Okay, so here we are. Just 3 pieces of content in this box. The Skrelle miniature, the settlement event card, the plant and the stone, and then this little innovation here, which is double-sided, as you can see, fig sapling, fig tree. We'll start with a little look at the miniature. I really, really like this model. Skrelle is dressed in what's very much like a variant sort of generic outfit, leather, and she's carrying an alternate version of a bone sickle. She's got all these like nice tools wrapped up here on the back in kind of reference to a prospector. I also really like these little mandrake type head here from a plant. This is a gorgeous model. It's got a style that's not super common, but sits very well within the whole context. I say not super common. It's become more common with the Gambler's Chest giving access to narrative sculpts and things like that, but I just greatly appreciate this level of detail and the sheer amount of equipment that she has. You can see, like, look at this little flower here. Tiny little lantern type things hanging off over here. We've got a I'm trying to think, what is that, a I'm not sure if that's a Blood Compass Lantern or a Screaming Brain Mint from the Screaming Antelope. Who knows? I haven't taken a good look at the equipment, and some of it does seem to be just new stuff, like we don't have a shovel yet in the game. But yeah, it's a fantastic sculpt, very characterful, very dynamic, and I found this to be very useful on the board to represent any pure support style survivors you're playing, because she's wearing stuff that could stand in as rawhide. She's got a bone sickle. That's a pretty common thing to put onto a support style survivor. It's just a nice character piece, and absolutely the style of in-game model that I adore. I think this is more of this. Yes, please. That's great. As to the rest, the actual game content, we first of all have this settlement event, which is another one of the Welsh references within Kingdom Death. Plant on the Stone is a reference, of course, to the Sword on the Stone, which is a part of the Arthurian mythology, which is, of course, Welsh in origin, well, Brythonic, but Welsh as well. I mean, it's Arthur Pendragon. That's literally two Welsh names, meaning man, bear, dragon chief. Yeah, so anyway, I bring it up partly because actually there's a Welsh theme to both of these two releases. Morgan, I'll talk about that, but that is actually a Welsh name. But also I just wonder whether Adam is aware of the amount of Welsh folklore mythology he's putting in, the same way he's aware of all the Berserk references and the, many other different kind of like Monster Hunter references and Warhammer Quest references. Those are consciously put in. I don't know if things like this are, or if it's just part of like American culture as a whole and not really knowing the actual origins of stuff like this. Who knows? I'd love to have a chat with Adam about it. It's not something I've ever had the time to approach and set up. So yeah. Anyway, this is a settlement event that has the survivors discover a plant and carved stone tablet at the outskirts of the settlement. And if you have pictograph, you get to do some stuff. If you don't, we'll look at the you don't first. If you don't have pictograph, then basically it just gets eaten. Departing survivors gain +1 survival and +1 insanity this lantern year. That's okay. It's not like amazing, but the settlement event deck is generally like a randomizer, a variance generator, rather than meant to help or harm. Sometimes it harms, sometimes it helps, sometimes it just does kind of a thing that doesn't really matter. And that's okay as a texture, emergent storytelling generator. And this is a fine addition to that. If you do have pictograph innovated though, a survivor you nominate will nurture the tree and you'll gain this fig sapling innovation. They'll also get +1 understanding, and they can't depart. And this card will remove itself from the settlement event deck, which makes it essentially what we call parasitic design. So parasitic design is where something's quite self-contained. It doesn't massively connect to a bunch of different things. For example, within the stuff, the Slender Man, despite being an internet creepypasta, is very integrated with the rest of the game. It has ties to the Phoenix and the White Lion and the Screaming Antelope in the kind of gear you craft from it. Same with the Lion Knight, very, very integrated in, same connections to the core game. In contrast to that, the Lonely Tree, a perfectly fine expansion, is very self-contained as well. It's parasitic, which kind of is fun because, of course, the Lonely Tree is narratively parasitic as well. But the Lonely Tree, essentially everything it's doing is in and about the Lonely Tree. If the tree turns up as terrain, it's there essentially to provide an unlock to fight the Lonely Tree nemesis. It does also provide an interesting puzzle during the showdown, an extra wrinkle, because you really want to avoid the monster getting to the fruit, so that's another texture to it. But in essence, as long as the fruit's there, you get lonely fruit. Lonely fruit unlocks the journey to get, fight the tree. It's all tree, and even its rewards are kind of very self-contained. You get one-shot fruits that can modify a survivor. So that's what I mean by parasitic design. It's a design terminology used in predominantly like card games and things like that, but it's very relevant when you're introducing an element to a game. It's like, is this sort of very neat and tidy and self-contained? And Plant in the Stone and the Fig Sapling is. You complete the Plant in the Stone event, it has a little bit of connection to Pictograph, but otherwise not much. And then once you've gotten its reward, the Fig Sapling, this is gone from the deck. I always really like settlement events like this because each additional settlement event into the deck increases the uniqueness and special nature of all of the other ones. There's no duplicates in the settlement event deck, so the more cards you have there, the more varied your experiences are going to be. And I do especially like ones that do their thing and then archive themselves so they don't just crop up again and provide some dead weight. So I really like the settlement event is what I'm saying. I think everything about it is fantastically done. On top of that, more pictograph integration is always good. Pictograph is a weird little mechanic that it isn't mechanically very good, at least in the first generation of releases. There's a change in the gambler's chest, but here it mostly exists to provide extra unlocks on other cards. So itself doesn't do very much, but it is tied into a whole lot of things. You could almost look upon that as being it is in fact the opposite of a parasitic design. Pictograph is very integrated and very linked to everything else. So, good card. Our Fig Sapling is a innovation, never goes into the deck. Science ones tend to be standalone. Doesn't put anything else into the deck either, helping with this self-contained nature. And you could do nothing at all with this. You could just ignore it if you wanted to. It'll simply add to your innovation count if you're looking whether you're gaining any visitors like the Hooded Stranger. But to be brutally honest, if you've already got Pictograph innovated, you've likely encountered the Hooded Stranger already, just of the tier nature of where Pictograph is located on the innovation tree. Our ability, our endeavour, is a Deep Root Massage. It does nothing 80% of the time. 20% of the time it helps the sapling grow, which doesn't do anything itself. But you achieve it a second time and you'll get to flip the card. The tree grows up. So this is kind of a place where you're going to put spare endeavours, but you're not really going to prioritise it a lot. If you're in a position where you desperately need to grow a population, you shouldn't be messing around with a Fig Sapling. You've got better use for your endeavours. But if you get to the end of the settlement phase and you've got a few left and you're like, well, we've got over 20 population, we're pretty comfortable on that front, there's not really anything we want to do, you can go and give the tree a bit of a massage and help it grow. We're talking 20% and then 20%, so it's going to take about, on average, 10 endeavours to get this to flip. Fair investment, but not ridiculous for, say, collective toil settlements. So very achievable. When you do, it flips over, it gives you +1 survival limit, and it helps, it basically gives you +1 survival when departing, as long as you consume the fruit. So essentially, it not only gives you that extra survival limit, but it contributes for that survival limit. So this more or less reads +1 survival to all departing survivors, flat out, just the consumption label providing a little bit of a wrinkle. That's it. I mean, this is, as I say, it's very self-contained. It adds a little bit more world building. It's very interesting. Fig Tree is very, very symbolic. And also we have a lot to think about with respect to just this. There's a tablet left here. Whoops, let's get to it. Which, like, the stone says that this, what the tree does, and can be deciphered and understood. So we're like, was it always there? Has it just grown up? Did something come here and deposit it nearby? We don't know. We don't know. We've also got the questions of how a fig tree can grow in a world with no sunlight. Do the survivors hang lanterns around it? Does it have some other way of growing in the darkness, like acanthus? Who knows? But this is the kind of little things I like, little pieces of the puzzle. and they all come together. And for something that is just a net positive to the game, I think it's fantastic. So that's my verdict. Is Skrelle is more or less for $5, so $6.25 with tax, or at least that was for me. Yeah, I would recommend getting it. I think it's pretty good. Physical version at $30, a little bit of a harder ask, but I think the miniature is great. It's one of the really good miniatures, and I like having more settlement events. I like having the fig tree. I don't ever feel like I don't want to put this content in a campaign. It's just going in. It's just going in, and that means I'm getting my money's worth. So I really like it. Thumbs up and a recommendation. Okay, let's get that tidied away, and then we'll take a look at Morgan. Okay, here we are. Before I open this, something which I wanted to show with some of the others and I couldn't is the back of the box, but now we can, and because this one's actually standing up, so you have a nice little bit of like a render of the character on the back. I regret to inform you that at least in physical the lantern doesn't glow like this. I've not opened this box yet. Maybe it does here. That I would be super excited if that is the case, but how about we get this open and find out. Hello, just in the editing room here, and I realise while looking at this I forgot to talk about the origins of the name Morgan, which is the connection that between the two releases. As mentioned, Sword and the Stone, Arthurian legends, so Brythonic Welsh. Morgan is an Irish Welsh originating name. Originally, it's Morcant was the earliest recorded version of that, which breaks apart into two separate words, Mor meaning sea and Cant meaning circle, so the name meant sea circle, and it was a very traditionally masculine name. Eventually, through pronunciation, it mutated to the form Morgan, which again still has sea on it, but Gan could be taken to mean sea circle, sea song, or sea child. And these days, Morgan is a unisex name. You know, I went to school with a chap called Morgan, and also in my class was a girl called Morgan. We had two Morgans. So that's the little connecting tissue between these two releases that I forgot to talk about in here. So that's it. I need to find a little image to put here in this voiceover bit. But okay, thanks. Bye. Okay, so here we are. This is the content that's all inside the Morgan box, the legendary character Morgan. I'm not a big fan of this model. I'm just going to be honest. I have a problem when I talk with content creators from outside of the Kingdom Death space, where I'm going to quote here another video about boss battlers. That Kingdom Death is perceived to be the boobs and murder game. And murder is a card in the game, so I can't really defend that. But for a while, I was able to at least be like, I understand your position. At least the pin-up stuff isn't intended to be in-game content. But we've had a creep and increasing things like this. And I find this especially a bit disheartening because the original Morgan model, she's not like this. She's not this kind of pin-up-esque, hourglass figured, voluptuous, barely held in her clothing thing. I'm not going to belabor the point, but suffice to say, I'm conflicted about this model. Morgan's a cool character and one I was happy to see get reprinted. And I'm always like having more survivors to use on the battlefield, especially ones in the new scale, which she is. She's an unarmored survivor in the normal scale. There's nothing that would stop you from just using her as a like basic starting survivor. But I just wish I wish she was a little bit more practically endowed and clothed. Also, I hate this lantern design so much. It's a pain in the butt to paint. I never have a fun time painting it at all. So that's always a little bit of a negative. It is what it is. You may feel differently. I'm sure I will have a really fun time when I paint Morgan. That's why I'm conflicted. I just think compared to like Skrelle, this is a step behind Skrelle in artistic vision and design. So it is what it is. Also, the lantern doesn't light up. I hoped it would based on the art on the back here on the simulator, but I guess not. Maybe that's something that happen in the future. You will be able to like set a glow for these lanterns when we get painting involved. That would be cool. So kind of like, I'm going to give this like a soft fail in regards to the model. Not my cup of tea. Definitely not high up in my Kingdom Death painting queue, that's for sure. Okay, we get 4 pieces of game content. Install guide, very straightforward. Shows the 2 ways in which this is used. We get a glossary update to talk about how the new ability works, which is nice. We get a character card and a secret fighting art. Now, I also need to grab the rulebook. I'll be one moment. Okay, great. So, there's 2 different ways you're going to interact with this particular thing, because it's part of a mechanic called characters. That's not on the simulator yet, but it is in the Gambler's Chest. So, little bit of spoilers in regards to that. If you don't want to know how the character system works, I'll warn you when I get to talking about the character innovation system specifically. I'm going to talk first of all about this as you'd use it on the simulator, and as it says at the top here. So if you follow the install guide, we can see without the character innovation, the next time a survivor is born in settlement, they gain the Dream of the Heart character card, and you apply its rules to that survivor. That only happens once in the campaign, and a newborn can only gain the effects of 1 character card. There are other character cards with this kind of text on them, so you have to work out what's going to happen if you have multiples of these cards with this unlock. It's not a super common situation outside of the simulator, because most of us who have these now have the character deck innovation. Okay, the card itself, let's flip it up, is this, the Dream of the Heart, a legendary ability character card. I'll explain legendary abilities in the character innovation section. As we can see here, we have You're a Saviour. Right, so standard Saviour rules apply. Gain 1 permanent red and blue affinity, +1 speed, and these abilities, Ulthwarta and Life Exchange. Ulthwarta. I don't know the actual pronunciation for Ulthwarta. I'm going to pronounce it like that because that's kind of how I pronounce it from where I'm from. Although I'd actually pronounce it in a Welsh accent, which I don't use on these videos for the most part. Life Exchange we've seen before, so let's just pop up to that. Life Exchange is right here. In the Aftermath, you gain 1 additional Hunt XP. You may not wear other gear, so gear with the other keyword. If you trigger the White Secret Story event, you cease to exist. When you retire, you cease to exist. So, in other words, you can't... And also there's additional text that stops you getting ageless through any other kind of method. So standard saviour things to be considered here. Ulthwarta has this ability up here. At the start of your act, you may declare Ulthwarta X in a loud booming voice. X being a number as opposed to being a cool phrase that you're saying because you're turning into Voltron. If you do, you get to ignore the effects of X special rules until the end of your act among the following: cumbersome, early iron, frail, sentient, slow, and unwieldy. X cannot be more than your total pairs of red and blue affinities, so 1 baseline plus whatever you get from your gear. When your act ends, you gain +X Hunt XP. When you trigger your 2nd Hunt XP milestone, you will gain the Heart of Ulthwarata Secret Fighting Art, which is here. Now, before we get to that, let's have a look at some weapons that you might want to be negating these keywords on. We have a nice little selection of gear cards that have just blinked into existence thanks to the cut. And let's just talk through them all. So, cumbersome, that's our first one. Cumbersome mostly comes on bows and the bone club. That's the primary places where you encounter it. The truth is, Cumbersome on bows is never really a huge issue. They have range to compensate for it, so they tend to be absolutely fine and content with being cumbersome, and normally a survivor has something else to do when they are suffering from it. Bone club, sure, cumbersome here a bit more of a deal, but generally you play other things that you have available, blocking with a shield, or using the rawhide headband to bring the monster back to you, things like that. So cumbersome's not really something you want to replace particularly often. That does line up with the fact that this costs you hunt XP to do, so that is a concern. You wouldn't want to run it all of the time. To be honest, I just couldn't see myself triggering that. As for early iron, our best example of that is this lantern sword. You can actually get this early in a campaign if you're lucky with the right set of events and dice rolls, so it's worth considering mentioning. Early iron is a hugely debilitating ability that really messes up a weapon, like 3 speed with early iron. That's 3 dice that have a 10% chance of rolling a 1 and cancelling your entire attack is a big negative. But the key thing here is, if you're crafting this from the blacksmith, you have access to the polishing lantern, which will ignore early iron anyway, so I don't consider that to be much of a benefit. It's kind of maybe an edge case thing, but if you have it, you've got to be popping this every single turn to ignore early iron. You know, if this worked until the end of the showdown instead of the end of your act, maybe we'd be having a different consideration. Like that's powerful. This is powerful, but such a tiny window, and you need to be surging in order to make the best use of that. Okay, then we have frail. There's a lot of good weapons that have frail. The Sun Bateau, for example, classic, frail, but usually we have ways of getting around it. Dragon Slayer, expensive, very powerful weapon, again frail, but both of these are 1 speed, so we're not too worried about it. We could consider the Scrap Bone Spear, but honestly, if you're spending Ulthawara and Hunt XP on a Scrap Bone Spear, then really you need to just put this back in the box because it's a terrible card. Okay, sorry, it is. Muramasa, on the other hand, now this is a spot where I could see using this. 6 speed with frail and a very strong profile, sharp, deadly too, unique, even has sentient, which is something else you want to ignore right here afterwards. There might be a spot for this here, but the question is, are you going to sit your Dream of the Heart Saviour in your settlement waiting to see if Muramasa turns up or not? Because this is not something you can get particularly easily, regularly, or even early. It's more of kind of a wow moment when it turns up. So, who knows? In respect to slow, most slow weapons just are locked at 1 speed always, so we don't have a lot of examples of slow with a higher speed, and one of them is the Perfect Slayer, which is a bonkersly crazy weapon anyhow, and there is a situation for using that, but you're not getting the Perfect Slayer very early, so again, that's quite situational outside of when you've got the character innovation, which could change things. And lastly, we have Unwieldy. Unwieldy doesn't turn up on too many weapons. The Whistling Mace is one of the classic examples. Unwieldy is not the reason the Whistling Mace is used, well, I should say underused. It's the strength. If this was a strength 4 or 5 weapon, it would get used a lot more, because actually it's a really good perfect hit ability on a otherwise good stat line on a good weapon type. It's not Unwieldy that's holding it back, it is that strength. So ultimately I think this is quite a situational ability, and when I compare it to what we have from some of the others, it's a little bit underwhelming. We can get up and take a look at the glossary and see the others. Okay, so here's one, Keratosis, which gives you X automatic hits, up to your total of red affinities, individual red affinities as opposed to pairs. And when you trigger age 2, you gain the Beast of Keratosis Secret Fighting Art. This is the least impressive of the 3 that come in the core game, and I still prefer this over what we're getting from Ulthawara. Our next one should be over the page. Here it is, Dominatus. When you suffer damage, you can add X to each hit location. Really good. Really, really good. Armor points are amazing, and green saviors tank like nobody's business. They are the best tanks in the game for their short periods of existence, which is absolutely fantastic. Please give me this. And then the last one should be under L. Let's have a look. Here we are. Lucerne, which is extra luck. We've talked in the past about how good luck is. Luck on blue affinities. Fantastic. And this is before making a wound attempt, which means you can line it up against exactly the hit location you want to wound. So ultimately, this is, I think, the weakest of all the 4 different saviour abilities we've had so far. But I do want to say, lore-wise, it's fascinating and amazing. We didn't know we were going to get mixed affinity saviours, and now it's like, does that mean that we're going to get a red-green one and a blue-green one? And will we get one that's like a white one, all 3? You know, we don't know. But it is kind of exciting on the concept, and whatever Ulfwarta is also really fascinating and interesting. I that part I'm really excited about. This, not so much. So anyway, let's see what happens. The second Hunt XP milestone, age 2, we get this secret fighting art. So we'll just flip it up. Okay. You may concentrate. So concentrate's like doing your Dragon Ball Z charge up attack. And then you get to perform the Heart of Ulfwarta, which I think is lore-wise really, really cool. You reach into the dream and pluck out a dying lantern to replace your own. You cease to exist. A survivor that has died this showdown takes your place. You replace your model and survivor record sheet with theirs. They use your gear grid. They heal, erase a permanent injury, and gain +6 Hunt XP from time moves very quickly in the realm of the Ethereal Dreamer. So that's like representing that. Really interesting ability. This is like an extra life for a very valuable survivor. Of course, what that means is the longer the campaign is running, the better this is going to be, because your early survivors, unless say it's your Fist and Tooth survivor, and even then you're kind of in the mid-campaign if they're close to making their mastery, that's when you want to be like popping it. So getting this via the unlock of like the first survivor that you have as a child is kind of not great, because you're going to want to sit them in the settlement and not do anything with them. And the problems with that is, first of all, that means you've got one survivor who's just kind of chilling their heels, not doing very much. Maybe they come out for a couple of fights to get this unlocked and then they sit back. But the other thing is, over time, if you get Clan of Death or you get Saga, your baseline survivors get stronger, and this saviour doesn't benefit as much. On top of that, if you're playing People of the Lantern, having one saviour precludes your ability to get any more saviours. So this will lock you out of getting a blue or a green saviour, both of whom are vastly superior. They straight up are. And that's like not great. So you're encouraged to spend this saviour as fast as possible, but to be honest, they're just kind of not particularly inspiring. You might level them up really quickly and use them as murder bait, which is where you get a saviour up to a high Hunt XP and then leave them in the settlement, so they are guaranteed to be the murdered target to protect other more valuable survivors. But again, it's kind of better to do that with a blue or a green saviour, because they've already provided a lot of value. This thing, it doesn't provide a lot of value except in the really bad situation that you've lost a survivor, and that can be super powerful. I can definitely see, if you're playing with a scout, having a Dream of the Heart saviour as your scout could be very potent as a insurance policy against having a really bad situation and losing a lot, but this doesn't inspire joy. So let's go into thinking a little bit about what we can do with this in our campaign. So in People of the Lantern, as mentioned, it's going to preclude the other saviours. You're probably going to want to spend it as soon as possible, because when you have a constant stream of saviours, you should churn through them. You should be burning them out as fast as possible. But the downside of that is you're always missing out on weapon proficiency XP, weapon proficiency points, which is quite significant. It's one of the largest pieces of tension in developing a good settlement, is that push and pull between, can I get myself good hunt XP versus good weapon proficiency development. There's certain beats you really want to hit within a campaign, otherwise you're going to lag behind and have trouble. Fist and Tooth and Shield are both ones you want to develop at a reasonable pace. And on top of that, Spear is really good as well to get unlocked and have a proficiency level. So burning through saviours is always interesting, but then you've only got 3 survivors who are progressing weapon proficiency. I really, really wish that saviours gained weapon proficiency at double the rate as well, to represent their accelerated pace. It would still be tricky to get weapon mastery with them, because if you're using the abilities, they could blink out of existence while doing it. But it might be more interesting. So I think in People of the Lantern, this is kind of not great under this particular situation. In fact, I'd kind of recommend you think about whenever you have a saviour born, that you just shuffle up the 4 secret fighting arts and draw one and have that saviour. Interesting house rule, doesn't require any additional components, and could add a bit more texture and make the saviours a bit more unique and force you to use ones that are maybe less interesting than normal for a while. Who knows? But as it stands, People of the Lantern don't really want this. People of the Sun, not excited by it, but not upset. I could see keeping this in the settlement and using it once I have Warriors of the Sun, so that the Ulfwartha saviour is like a backup in case those Warriors of the Sun die. Same with People of the Stars. People of the Stars even more so, perhaps. That's a campaign very much about successfully progressing your best survivors and keeping them for as long as possible. And you don't want them dying, so that could be a very powerful little backup. So it's got some utility and use. But now let's take a look at what Dream of the Heart is going to be like as a part of the character innovation. So for those of you who haven't played the Gambler's Chest yet, who haven't unlocked the character innovation, then now's the time for you to just sort of pop and skip to near the end. I'll make sure I put chapter headings on this video, so you'll see where there's like final thoughts, so you can avoid this section about the Gambler's Chest. I'll just have it marked in the timeline in the chapters. Okay, so I am going to grab, and hopefully I remember to edit onto screen the relevant image that I need. Right, so I have it here, although you can't, well, you should be able to see it as long as I remember to do my editing job. I should take a note of that. Done. Right, so the way that the character deck is, so the way the character innovation works is, once you've unlocked it, it goes into your innovation deck. It's a consequence of Inner Lantern. It's a faith thing. And then you innovate it and it gives you access to this character deck. Now this character deck is set up at the start of the campaign, and it uses these very specific character cards. They have character on the back of them. I'm going to have to deal with that bird. One moment. It's being noisy. Okay. Close the door to the bird room. There are crows out in the garden, so they were starting to get a bit concerned and alerting everyone there were crows around. Anyway, so character deck, yeah. You'll set it up and you have all of these character cards. They come in 3 types. So you have impairments, which are like in-game impairments, they're negatives. You have abilities, which are positives. And then you have legendary abilities, which Dream of the Heart is one. So when you construct the deck, the minimum number of cards you can put in it is 24 plus one legendary ability. And the construction of the main deck is you can put 5 ability cards in for each one impairment. So you'll typically pick enough to like 4 sets, because that's 6 cards, 4 sets, that's 24. So 4 impairments, 20 abilities, 1 legendary ability. So we have a 25 card deck, and each card is unique. The wrinkle is you can only have 1 legendary ability in your deck, and you need to choose what one you're going for, and you're picking at the start of the campaign. And you don't want to put more of the other kind of cards into the deck, because then you're going to reduce the odds of seeing the legendary ability card. If I remember correctly, it's each card you have a 4% chance of seeing. So at the base 25 deck size, so that's like what you want to stick at. Now, the Gambler's Chest came with 2 other legendary abilities. These are the Fang and Weapon Master. So to refresh, Dream of the Heart, you're a saviour, you gain 1 permanent red and blue affinity, plus on speed, Ulthawata, life exchange, which will unlock Heart of Ulthawata. You have all of the negatives of being a saviour. The Fang is you ignore cumbersome on weapons, and when you depart you subtract 1 armor point from all hit locations. That is specifically a bow orientated legendary ability. Archers don't mind being at a long distance, so that's their main form of protection. I should say archers don't mind having lower armor because they like being at a longer distance as their form of protection. So subtracting 1 from all hit locations, while a fairly big negative, is very manageable through playstyle, whereas this you can't. There's no play patterns you can really do to get around this negative outside of just not using them, which isn't really a good solution. Whoops, excuse me, I forget the mouse wheel is linked on both. Okay, both screens, right. But then we have Weapon Master. Gain weapon proficiency ranks at twice the speed. When you reach a weapon mastery, you leave the settlement to further hone your craft, never to be seen again. So, big negative, in that once you complete a mastery, that mastery is gone, you don't get to use it at all. But this is my pick. Every time Weapon Master is my pick, because it halves the length of time it takes to do the meat and the vegetables, the vegetable part of the campaign, which is getting Fist and Tooth maxed, which is getting Shield maxed. I just like being able to do that, and I will take my Shield Master and my Fist and Tooth Master leaving anytime, because you can get close to unlocking it, you can get family unlocked, you can have a bunch of kids with their half the weapon mastery, and then you can just complete this, get the unlocks, let them go off, and you've got a bunch of good, well-skilled babs who can take over their parents' legacy and get to mastery a lot faster. Weapon Master it's solving a problem that I don't particularly like being a part of Kingdom Death, which is that tension between Hunt XP and weapon proficiency. That always doesn't feel great, so having a Weapon Master in the deck is solving a problem that I personally want to be solved. It's the same thing I kind of mentioned. I'd like Saviours to earn their weapon proficiency at double rates as well. I would really like, whenever there's accelerated Hunt XP being gained as a result of a fight being won, that there's also accelerated weapon proficiency, because weapon proficiency is one of the key development things, and it's so much less permanent than getting gear unlocked and constructed. So yeah, you've got to pick one of these 3. Do you pick Dream of the Heart? Do you pick the Fang, which basically works for... It's doing what Ulthawata is doing anyway, but just for cumbersome at a cost of armor points? Or do you pick the one that, frankly, is head and shoulders above the other two. It's Weapon Master every time. So in a character deck, I'm not putting this in. I don't want to put this in. I don't want this as a legendary ability. It's balanced, but it's not exciting. It's not really solving a big thing. So, okay, that's the issue. Which brings us to the final summary of this, which is I don't think that this is particularly exciting or worthwhile content. It's really interesting from a lore perspective, but for me it's got a decidedly average miniature with a below average legendary ability, and while this is very interesting, I would prefer this to have expanded on the space of Saviours rather than be a part of the character deck. So, it's five. Once it's out, it's $5 probably. That's perfectly fine. Unless you're absolutely in love with the miniature or you have to collect everything, I wouldn't buy this in physical. It's not the worst white box content we've ever had. That's Lunar Ire. But this isn't in the top half of good pieces of white box content. This is very below average, like D- or something. So my opinion there is it's not. You don't need it. If you get it for free as part of a master key, fantastic. But it's not terrible to pick up for $5, but I wouldn't be buying this in physical form. It's just not enough. So there we are. Skrelle, highly recommend. 12 thumbs up. Morgan, I think you can pass on unless you want to paint the model, which more power to you if you do. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. And until next time, happy hunting.